In the early 1920s, one invention would signal the start of the modern era and the dissemination of information around the world. For the first time, the events of history could be reported as they happened to almost anywhere on Earth. That historic invention was radio. Welcome, fellow YouTubers. The Roaring Twenties radio channel brings you another video on early radio. Who was Kenneth Harkness? The research into the life of Kenneth Harkness was quite a job. I am grateful that I had the help of several fellow radio collectors from AntiqueRadios.com who led me out of the dark dead end into the light of knowledge. The facts about this man's life were buried deep into the past, but with their help we were able to find out exactly who Kenneth Harkness was. On November 12th in 1896, a man named Stanley Edgar was born in Glasgow, Scotland. Little is known about Stanley's life growing up, but he did have an interest in the game of chess and what at the time was the recent invention of radio. Edgar moved to America somewhere around 1918, and that date is far from firm. Somewhere around 1924, Edgar decided to go by the name of Kenneth Harkness for reasons that remain unknown. The Federal Bureau of Investigation had Edgar listed in their files, and it confirms the alias that Edgar went under. In this video, we will use the name Harkness going forward. Harkness married Marjorie Townsend, although the date of the marriage is unknown. It was Marjorie's third marriage, and she had 2 children from her second marriage to Henry Clay Founds. The children's names were John and Betty. Harkness wrote articles under his real name Stanley Edgar early on, like this article on vacuum tubes in the September issue of Radio News in 1922. Apparently, his transition to using the name Harkness was gradual, as he wrote under both names in the March 1923 issue of Radio News magazine. Kenneth Harkness wrote his first book and had it published in 1923. The book was titled Radio Frequency Amplification Theory and Practice. Early radio pioneers were obsessed with improving radio reception and the ability to listen to more distant stations, and Harkness was no different. His search for a better radio bore fruit in 1924 with the invention of the counterflex circuit, which substantially improved a radio's sensitivity and ability to receive distant radio stations, seen here in a drawing of his invention. Harkness was brought onto the staff of Radio in the Home magazine in May of 1924. During his tenure with the magazine, for which he would write exclusively per his new contract, Harkness wrote many enlightening technical articles about radio and radio circuits. He had a knack for being able to explain complex information about radio in such a way that even a radio novice could understand it. In this photo, Harkness, on the right, is with Henry M. Neely, publisher of Radio in the Home magazine. Neely is sitting on the front steps of his radio station, call sign 3XP. Neely's station was federally licensed as a United States Special Land Station. Also around the mid-1920s, Harkness became the chief engineer of the Radio Guild Incorporated, a radio manufacturer based in New York. The company produced Harkness's radios in kit form. Little information about that company could be found. Kenneth Harkness may have formed a few companies with similar names in the mid to late 1920s. As I often find with lesser-known radio pioneers, information from a century ago can get a little murky. Apparently, the first of his companies was formed in 1924 under the name Harkness Radio Corporation. It was located at 737 through 739 Frelinghuysen Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. Many of the radios were sold in kit form or for an additional fee could be purchased assembled. Some of the radio models produced were the Counterdone Counterflex 3, a 3-tube radio, the 1-tube Reflex, and the Counterflex 6, a 6-tube radio. In February 5, 1927 issue of Radio World, an advertisement for a new radio kit designed by Harkness lists a company named KH Radio Laboratories at 124th North Cypress Avenue in the Bronx. A third company noted in the book Vintage Radio Identification Sketchbooks Volume 1 by D.H. Moore informs us that in 1927 a new company called Kenneth Harkness Corporation was set up in New York. to sell Harkness radios. Before signing his exclusive contract with Radio in the Home magazine, Harkness was on staff at Radio News magazine, writing more articles on radio circuits and design. He became a prolific writer, as he also wrote articles for Radio World and Science and Invention magazine. Harkness left the radio business during the Great Depression and turned his focus to the game of chess. He wrote several books on the game and became managing editor of Chess Review magazine. On October 4, 1972, Kenneth Harkness, who was the United States Chess Federation business manager at the time, died on a train while traveling in Europe. He was on his way to the city of Skopje, the capital of Macedonia, where he was to be an arbiter at the Chess Olympiad. He was interred at the Boca Raton Municipal Cemetery and Mausoleum in Florida. His wife Marjorie was interred with him upon her death on April 29, 1981. My sincere thanks and gratitude to these members of AntiqueRadios.com. Well, that's it for this video. There'll be more to come as we continue to investigate the early history of the world's first true mass medium, radio. Thanks for watching.